Okay, well tonight we are going to be talking about owning your now. We're going to talk about owning your now. If you're not taking notes, this is a great time to start. I like note takers. Okay, owning your now. We were talking as a staff, this is a really difficult thing for students to do because everything in your world, in this window of life, revolves around planning for then. So almost everything you do, talking in your class, you're prepping for then. Your world revolves around preparation for what's coming, but what if God had something amazing for you right now? Now, I'm not talking about not planning. Planning is good. You need to plan. That's not up for question tonight. The question for us tonight is, do we own our now? Do we really grab where we are, or are we seeing now as a placeholder for then? I'll be honest with you, I grew up in a house of all boys. Okay, so the word now, like it's time to leave now, it was simple. We had like one step, okay? Time to leave, shoes on, we're gone. Right? One step, and if I'm honest, shoes were optional. I remember hearing my friends playing and thinking, if I take 2 minutes to put on my shoes, I'm going to miss something. So I'm just going to go. I don't need shoes. I ain't nobody got time for that. Did y'all ever have that experience where you're thinking, man, this minute and a half to slip on these Vans and Velcro them? We're talking about Velcro. We're not talking about tying stuff. We're talking about slipping shoes. I didn't even have time for that. But honestly, growing up in a house of all boys, now and leaving, I thought that's a one-step process. Put your shoes on, now we need to leave. Then I got married. Okay, I didn't know that now actually had multiple meanings. I had no idea. Early on in our marriage, I'd be like, all right, baby, you ready to go? She's like, yeah, I'm coming right now. Now, this was before I knew that she was a liar. And so she's like, I'm coming right now. So, I take her at her word. She's beautiful. She looks, she's amazing. I didn't know that she had a pathological lying problem, so I go to the car. And I'm sitting in the car. It's like 1 minute, 2 minute, 3 minute, 4 minute, 5 minute. And I'm thinking, what happened? Something must have gone wrong. So I go back in the house. And I'm like, hey, are you okay? She's like, yeah, I'm on my way. I'm coming right now. So I thought that meant she was coming right now, because in my mind, now meant like now. And she's like, I'm coming right now. She's like, okay, great. So go back to the car, 1 minute, 2 minute, 3 minute, 4 minute, 5 minutes. So I'm thinking, okay, either my wife is a liar or she has been abducted by aliens. And so I go back in the house. Now I'm mad and confused. And so I go back in and I'm like, hey, what is going on? And she's like, yeah, I'm coming right now. Now has different meanings, right? Doesn't it? Now why is now so hard? I have 2 beautiful kids. Wonderful, amazingly obedient, just awesome, world changer. Sophie's going to be the president. Tate's going to be like some amazing artist. Seriously, it's like, is this going to be unreal? We've got a culture shaper and a lawmaker. That's what we do in the Griffin house. All right? And so we've got this amazing, little did I know that most of our discipline in our house would revolve around the word now. I had no clue. That when I would say, hey, can you put your shoes on real quick? They'd be like, yeah, Dad, absolutely. Completely. Just like, yes, sir, I'm thinking, that's what I'm talking about. Way to go. And so I leave the room to tie up some other things. And I come back in. Nothing has changed. Socks are not on. Shoes are not even found. Did you know finding shoes is like a miracle? I mean, finding shoes, whew. Goodness gracious. I mean, we've been looking for Tate's shoes for like 5 days. We don't even have a big house. I don't know where they went, And so you go back into the room and no socks, no shoes, no nothing has moved. I'm like, hey, you didn't put your shoes on? They're like, oh, Dad, did you want me to do that now? No, I didn't actually. I want us to go, you be barefooted, then we come home, then put your shoes on. That's what I meant. Thank you for being so awesome and understanding the word now. I mean, think about it. Why is now so hard? Now is a really, really difficult concept. And I think it's because sometimes now doesn't feel like it really matters. Now doesn't feel like then. Now can feel mundane. Now can feel routine. Now can feel boring. Then, that's exciting. If we can just get then, that's when life gets fun. That's when my dreams and my passions can come alive, right? I mean, now is difficult. And I honestly think that the reason why now is so hard is because it pushes on the button in us called content. I mean, are you content? I've been thinking about being content recently because it's this massively, it's so alluring, the idea of just being at rest where you are. Content doesn't mean stagnant. Content means like peaceful. It doesn't mean that you're not looking forward. It doesn't mean that you're not hoping that things that are the best is yet to come and that you're expecting big things to come, but you are at rest. You are content. And that is a very, very weird, tough thing to wrestle with, because if we're honest, it's a little bit easier to be discontent than it is to be content. Content actually doesn't have anything to do with where you live, doesn't have anything to do with the job that you have, doesn't have anything to do with your relationship status, doesn't have anything to do with how many followers you have on Instagram. Content is a mindset. If we're honest, content is a heart set. It's what we set our heart on in the process that will allow us to rest in God or strive hoping to do something. Because content now is content then. But discontent now is discontent then. Let me say that again. Content now is content then. But discontent now is going to be discontent then. You can't just hope that you will stumble upon your dream job and then be content. Live in the dream city that you've always wanted to live in and then be content. Did you know that most people only like 80% of what they do, and that's like good? So if you have a tendency to look at what you don't like and to buy into the grass is greener on the other side lie that will rob you of your ability to own your now, hoping that your then will bring this emotional experience that will bring peace to you and hope in your heart and vision for the future, you have been deceived. Because being content doesn't have anything to do with that. Being at peace with where you are has nothing to do with where you are. It has everything to do with where you're finding your hope, where you're finding your strength, and where you're locking your gaze. Because discontent breeds like a cancer. It's pervasive. It doesn't stay within the boundaries of one aspect of your life. If you're discontent about one thing, eventually you'll become discontent about other things. And you might actually be thriving in one area of your life, but there's this one thing over here that you allow the seed of discontent to fall into that soil in your heart. And eventually that seed will begin to grow roots and it will begin to invade the different areas of your life. And you will find yourself being discontent, maybe right in the middle of the will of God for your life. Because you feeling discontent doesn't mean that you're waiting for God to put you where He's going to put you. He's put you where He wants you. Therefore, the question is, content now, content then. Are we owning our now? So what do we do with this cancer of being discontent? Where do we go with this? Where do we find hope? What's the medicine? What's the cure? Well, I was reading in Philippians. It's one of my favorite books in the Bible. Philippians Chapter 4. If you have a Bible, I'd encourage you to open it up there and read along with us. But this book of the Bible was written by a dude named Paul. And Paul was writing a letter to a church. And this letter to the church in Philippi was filled with so much encouragement and wisdom about who Jesus was. I mean, this is where we get that famous, don't consider anyone better than yourselves, treat everybody like Jesus, the amazing humility piece. We get so much beautiful character of God, the nature of a believer in Philippians 2. And he's tying it up here in Philippians 4. Because the Philippians had just given him a gift. They'd given him some money. And honestly, the tail end of Philippians 4 kind of reads like a thank you note. Like I just got back from Seattle, and I was staying with some people. And so I wrote them a thank you note. And if I'm honest with you, it kind of reads a little bit like this, but just not as cool. Because Paul gives us a window, as he's just writing this thank you note, into what made him Paul. What set him apart. The inner workings of this man of God who went through so much trial and victory, who came from such a crazy background to overcome so much shame of where he had been and embrace where God had called him to, who lived in seasons of solitude in prison with dreams of seeing the world touched and changed for the gospel. When you read about the life of Paul, you're like, man, this guy hit so many roadblocks. He had so many walls that were thrown up in front of him. So many things that he probably could have thrown up his hands and said, well, maybe it's not the will of God. Maybe I should get upset and discontent about my circumstances. Maybe I should not embrace my now because God's called me to this thing over here, that then thing. That's when things are going to be amazing in my life. That's when things are going to really move. But Paul had this different mindset. He really owned his now. And we get a window into how he did that in Philippians 4, starting in verse 10. As he's thanking the church for giving him money. And then he slips in this sentence that just messes with me. It says this: I rejoice greatly in the Lord. At last you have renewed your concern for me. Indeed, you have been concerned, but you had no opportunity to show it. I'm not saying this because I'm in need, for I have learned to be content whatever the circumstances. I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation. Whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want, I can do everything through Him who gives me strength. I can do everything through Him who gives me strength. Paul says, I've learned to be content. I have learned to be content. No matter the circumstances, in a season of great victory, of abundance, of provision, of open doors, of massive opportunity, for the dreams of my heart just seeming like they are just running wild, and in great seasons of trial, opposition, definite pain, Paul is saying, I've learned the secret of being content. So it naturally beckons the question, what is the secret? What is the secret? And I truly believe that it is found in verse 13 when it says, I can do everything. Say everything. Everything. I can do everything through him who gives me strength. Do you know that this word content means a state of satisfaction? A state of satisfaction. Therefore, learning to be content is learning how to be satisfied. Learning how to have this steadfast, deep commitment so that circumstances do not define how you feel day to day. Doesn't that just sound hopeful? Doesn't that just sound like good news? That your circumstances wouldn't affect you? They wouldn't have any control over you? Yet in the strength of God, you can overcome everything. No matter what it is, that God is big enough and better than the difficulty that you're facing, that the roadblock that you seem to be hitting, for the city that you might be living in. I mean, how many times have I heard, man, if I could only be here then. This is my dream. What I'm doing now is just kind of a space holder until I can really do that. What if this everything through him, Jesus who gives me strength, was for now? What if it was for right now? What if the impact that you're burning to make started right now? What if you're in Waco, Texas, the NYC of the South, the cultural hub of America, where kings and presidents come to shape the future? What if right here, right now is the beginning of you living in the thing that you feel like God is calling you to? Because content now is content then. But if we're not owning our now, we will miss the opportunity of now. We will look past now. We will skip over the field that God has put us in for today and maybe miss some preparation and growing and learning and maturity that we need to really make the God-sized impact then. Your now is connected to then. Even if you dream about living in New York City and being a Broadway dancer, I don't know what you're dreaming about. But you living in Waco, Texas is not just until then. In the story of God, somehow you living here is not an accident. You being involved in this college ministry, you going to Baylor, NCC, TSTC, whatever university that you're going to, is a part of the grand story that God is writing about your life. And that's why Paul's like, I can do everything through him who gives me strength. So we have to be those who look in the middle of what we don't understand into the eyes of the one who does understand. And that's why Hebrews 12:2 is so huge. Hebrews 12:2 says, let us fix our eyes on Jesus, check this out, the author and perfecter of your faith. The author and perfecter of your faith. Do you believe God is writing your story? Because if you believe that God is writing your story, then now is a part of the story. Now matters. Are we owning our now? Are we engaging our now? Do we see this city as a hindrance to our dreams or an opportunity for our dreams? Do you see where you live as the place to learn how to live a life of faith? Or do you see it as the block on 4th and Spate where you sleep so that you can get to your dreams? I mean, there's so much potential in this room. I get so fired up when I look out and I just see all of you guys, and I know you each represent a God-sized dream. What if we started living those dreams now? What if all of us started owning our now? We would change the city, and we'd also change the world. And I just thought it would be so appropriate if we just took a little bit of time and we interviewed just a couple of people from our community who have said, you know what, I'm about to own my now. And they have said, you know what, I'm going to give everything that I have to my now. And it has started making huge impacts and ripples beyond their wildest dreams. And you'll hear from them that they had no idea that their now when they were in college was actually completely shaping what is their now, which when then their now back in that now was their then. I'm talking about. So can you show some love to Steph and Blake as they come on up here? Thanks for being here, guys. Well, Steph, I want to start with you. You guys, you know that actually as a freshman, I was in Steph's life group. So we're talking about the 90s. He's like, we're going to party like it's 1999. Y'all know that song? A bunch of sinners. I'm joking. I'm totally joking. We did that song. That wasn't like a throwback. That was his time. You know what I mean? His time. So, Steph, why don't you just tell us a little bit about you and actually kind of what you do here in the city?
Great. My name is Stephanie Korteweg, and I am the director of the STARS Mentoring Project here. Before that, I taught in Waco ISD for 12 years at some various schools. So, our mentoring organization here at the church is actually part of a larger mentoring coalition throughout the city. So.
Tell us a little bit more about that for those of us that might not know what that means.
Yeah, so mentoring, we do two things. We do book clubs, and we also do Friday Club, where we engage the community. We have two schools here that we engage, elementary schools. It's kind of like what Jady was saying, the potential. We've said, hey, kids have tons of potential. If we can start investing in these kids, the potential really could be limitless. So we've invested in that, and then with a mentoring coalition, there's a bunch actually of mentoring organizations in and throughout the city from other churches. We've got about 7 other churches that have jumped on board and are actually investing in elementary schools. We're actually talking to a couple more churches saying, hey, would you get involved in the school in your backyard? Would you do it? Would you invest in the community? And it's been neat to see the momentum that's been going forward from that.
So, I mean, obviously, you're extremely passionate about kids. And I'm sure that didn't just start now. That started, and you're back now. So, I guess it would be in your then.
For the now, yeah. Got it.
We get into calculus here. And so, you're passionate about kids in college, you want to make an impact. So kind of take us into, why did you end up staying here in Waco 15 years ago? Mm-hmm. And how did that kind of tee up even what you're doing today?
Yeah, so at Baylor, I decided I wanted to do education. I took my first education course and loved it. I was like, this is it. I can go, I can make an impact in kids' lives, I can see, education was it for me. So when I was looking at, when I was about to graduate, I thought, well, where am I going to go? And I thought, you know what, I got plugged into the church, I got plugged into the life group, I had a community, I had people around me, and I thought, you know, the opportunity for growth in God probably won't be as great if I move out of this community, out of this community of believers. And I thought, okay, well, I'm staying.
So just want to reiterate that real quick. So you were like, what God is doing in me is so significant.
Yes.
I don't want to risk that for the sake of a potential career move.
Exactly.
So that's big. So how did then your career develop here after you made that decision?
So I started teaching at a local school in town, and what was really interesting in that is I've always had a passion for kids. I've always had a passion, because in my mind it's always been, kids really don't have a voice unless they've got an adult who has a voice for them. So that's always kind of been my passion, is to give a voice to those who don't have a voice. But then as I was teaching in the schools, I realized there was major injustice, and I saw it year after year after year after year. And something started happening in me, this natural passion coupled with the injustice I felt like God was showing me while I was in the school. I became hungry to see more happen. And what was really interesting was when I was in the schools, I taught at some schools, like I taught at this middle class school, and I thought, that's not where my heart is. Like, my heart is for kids who are disadvantaged or low socioeconomic. And I felt like every year I would pray about it. I held everything really loosely before God. And every year I would pray about it. And I'm like, okay, God, where do you want me? And it wasn't like this word from God, like, and go here, written in the clouds. That wasn't it. It was this thing, it was this kind of whisper. It felt just this whisper, and this question that came to mind every time. What do you have faith for? What do you have faith for every year? To go move to another city or for here? And I thought, you know what, I've got faith for here, because it takes just as much faith to stay here as it does to go somewhere else. And so and then I thought, well, what school? Maybe I should be at this, school that's low socioeconomic. Maybe I should work in there. And I felt like God was like, no, stay here. I had no idea. Like, I can't even describe all the times, but I had no idea working and being faithful in the school developed key relationships that now, 15 years later, I would have never, ever, ever thought, hey, I need to develop a key relationship with this one person because later they're going to become the school board president. Or I need to develop a key relationship with this person because they're really, really involved in Mission Waco. Or I need to develop this or this relationship because they're really involved in some nonprofits that we work with. I would have never, ever seen that. I went about living my daily life, and at times it felt mundane, but it was things that God set me up for, and I didn't understand it when I was in the middle of it at all.
So you were in the middle thinking, this isn't exactly what I had in mind when you're working with these rich white kids.
Yeah, absolutely.
I feel that every day. And so you're like, this isn't exactly what I had in mind, but because God knew what was coming, and in that time of teaching there, you had a girl in your class who was the daughter of the now school board president. And that you developed a friendship with them, which is now a very massive deal because it's created tons of opportunity for what you're doing now to advance in WISD in a public school district in ways that are really unprecedented. Am I right about that?
Absolutely.
So embracing your now when you were just starting off in education, even though it didn't necessarily look like you thought it was going to look, set up your now to be more than you could ask or imagine.
Absolutely. Right? Absolutely. Now I would have never been able to open the doors that opened as I came into this position as director of STARS. I would have never been able to open it, but the relationships that were formed that didn't make sense make complete sense now.
I love it. You guys thankful for Steph? Yeah. Hey, seriously, some of you guys are listening to her talk and you're like, man, I want to get involved with that. You can and you should, okay? You need to mentor a kid. You have time for it, okay? Even if you think you're busy, you have time to mentor a kid, all right? You're gonna be able to register at the end of the night. There's gonna be a table out there, so make sure that you do that. But I've got this massively mustached, beautiful bro over here, just looking so swaggy. Blake, tell us a little bit about who you are, bro, and what do you do?
Yeah, my name is Blake Batson.
It is on.
And I am from Waco, I went to Antioch, and I was actually in the youth group with Carl when he was the youth pastor. And
the seeds, Carl, the seeds.
And I am married. I'm a husband, and I own a business in town.
What's that business called?
It's called Common Grounds.
That's what I'm talking about!
That's a great response. Wow.
Now, how many of you are addicted to cowboy coffee? Raise your hand.
Come on.
All right. Come on. Don't lie. Some of you lie. That stuff is good. Okay? There's a secret sauce. Maybe we'll find out what it is tonight. Probably not. So, Blake, you're a business guy. You're an entrepreneur. You graduated from Baylor.
I did.
You had a million opportunities after you graduated. Tons of different directions you could have gone. What made you think, I'm going to stay here in Waco and I'm going to buy Common Grounds? How'd that happen?
It's actually a long answer. Do y'all mind if I tell just a bit of my story to you tonight? Just a little bit. I won't get too long. But actually, the beginning of that answer was when I hit rock bottom. I really did, and I was in college. I was a junior at Baylor, and I was working at Common Grounds as a barista. I had long dreadlocks, if you can imagine that. I didn't have a mustache, no facial hair actually, couldn't grow any facial hair. And I was very discontent, actually.
About the facial hair?
No, yeah.
I understand.
I mean, some of you might relate with me in that. Yeah, I can get an amen. So I was lost. I was not content in that period of life. And I was working at Common Grounds, and I remember thinking during that time, there was a dude who was working above me as my manager, and I kept thinking, I can do it so much better than that guy. He's not this, he's not this, he's a horrible communicator, he's passive aggressive. If I was the boss, I could do it so much better. So instead of being humble and just submitting, I just was rebellious and came up to come to work one night, very intoxicated, which I do not recommend or condone at all, and ended up, and I'm telling you all this, and I mean, we're friends, right?
Yeah,
we're all friends. Like, don't go spread this around all of Waco. But I was at work, and I was actually breaking mugs against the wall and throwing muffins, and I was just a riot. All of my staff already know this, so if you go tell them, you know what Blake did like 10 years ago, they won't care, they already know. So I ended up getting fired from Common Grounds for that, and I was really lost, and that it wasn't a wake-up call then. I continued to hit many walls, relationship-wise, and other jobs. I was kicked out of a program that I was in, and it finally got to this point where I just said, Lord, obviously, I can't figure it out. There's something that I'm missing. I felt like at the time I could do anything, that I could go anywhere and do anything, and yet I had no clue. I was just immobilized and disabled, really. And I remember thinking for the first time, Lord, whatever you have, if it's the smallest plot on the smallest field in the junkiest side of the kingdom, whatever it is, that's where I want to be, because I know that I can't figure it out. And I was actually, it was summer of 2009, and I went to a monastery in France, and I spent a week in silence in this monastery, because I was like, I gotta get away, gotta go spend time and just be in silence. And it was awesome, actually. It was really awesome. It was
next level.
Next level. And this verse really resonated with me when Jesus met his disciples, or met what would soon be his disciples, and they were out, and they'd been fishing all night, and they hadn't caught anything. You guys have heard that parable, or that passage? And they were actually cleaning their nets because they were done fishing, they hadn't caught anything, and Jesus says to them, go put back out into deep water and let down your nets for a catch. And that verse, when I was in France, just really stayed with me. Just those words, go put back out into deep water and let down your nets for a catch. And I just kept praying about it, and I thought at first, like, maybe my deep water is like Chicago or New York or England or something crazy and cool, and I really felt the Lord just hit home with me, like go back and put out to deep water, Waco, Texas. I've grown up here. I felt like I caught nothing. The 23, 24, I was 24 at the time. I caught nothing. I just hit brick walls, and just hit me. And that the Lord was really calling me to go back and really to trust Him and surrender who I was and what my dreams were. And so I did. I just said, you know what, whatever it is, I'm going to do it. And He instantly highlighted common grounds. I'm like, what the heck? I was fired. There's no way they'll let me back. But for some reason, I think actually the owner forgot that I'd been fired. I don't know what happened. They let me back, and it's just the favor of God. I really just gave myself, like Jady's talking about, I just gave myself to that moment in time. And it was really humbling because I had a degree and I was going back working for minimum wage, being a barista. I was 24. But I just gave myself to it, and I within 2 months was promoted to the general manager, and then that's another story in itself, but I worked for about 2 years, and to get to that answer, just fell in love with Common Grounds and what it is. The Lord taught me so much about who I am and my giftings. I think it's such a rich culture, and it's really the people there. It's really the culture of the staff. I get to now work with my wife every day, which is amazing. She's sitting right back here, gorgeous. And so it's such a blessing. The Lord really has multiplied the catch of fish and the fruit to what I could never have imagined at that point.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
So, sitting out here is a lot of adventurous people. A lot of adventurous folks, a lot of people with maybe even a dream of starting a coffee shop someplace. What would you tell them about their now? And honestly, why do you love Waco so much?
I think the first thing, you've already said it, Steph's already said it, just really embracing and surrendering and being content with whatever that small thing is right now. Because you have no idea, like Steph was saying, she had no idea who she was going to meet in that journey to position her to have the influence that she has. You have no idea who you're going to meet, what you're going to do, and that in your heart being surrendered to really God's dreams for you, it will amaze you. And the adventures that you will go on will be bigger and greater and more full and more alive than you could have ever imagined. It's just true. It's part of being in the kingdom. And so be content, live fully now, and when that day comes where you see that opportunity, go for it. You won't regret it.
It's awesome. You guys thankful for Blake? I want to honor both of them real quick because I've gotten to know Blake more really over the past year since we do so many events at Common Grounds, and we love doing it. But really, Blake is a man of God, and he leads his team into kingdom realities. And the reason we all love Common Grounds is because it's a kingdom place. And even in the midst of some of the weirdos that hang out there from time to time will come sit next to you and say nothing. You guys know what I'm talking about? It was like park next to you and just like be silent. And you're kind of like, okay, yeah, dude, high five, we're good.
Like they all mean well.
They all mean well. I love them. But I'm just saying, even in the middle of that, it still feels peaceful because of the culture that Blake has sowed into that place. And that's what happens when you bring the kingdom into your now. That's what happens. And Steph is making huge impacts in this city, inroads that are honestly unprecedented to allow churches, the schools literally came to the churches in the city and said, we can't do this without you. We must have you. And with all of this talk of churches getting out of public school, Waco ISD is like, would you please come into our public schools? And Steph is right on the front end of that. You got to hear from two heroes tonight. So can you show them some serious love as they take their seats? declarations where we want to kind of bring tonight to a close with a very simple challenge. Will you own your now? Do you really believe that God's the author of your story? And if you do, then right here in Waco, Texas, there might be something for you beyond the bubble. See what we did there? See that? So here's my challenge for you. Some of you have written off Waco because you think it's just a stepping stone. You've written off this city because you think this is just a placeholder in your story. What if even just this next week we really owned our now. We really owned the city that we lived in, and we said, you know, we're gonna grab this place by the horns. We're gonna live our dreams here, and we're gonna see God do amazing things in this place. And you know what I think will happen when you do that? I think you're going to fall in love with this place. I think you're going to fall in love with the people here. I think you're going to fall in love with the beauty of this city. I think you're going to fall in love with the potential of this place. I was hanging out with Blake earlier today, and he said, you know, Waco is in a really unique place. It's like what Austin was years ago. The momentum of what's going on and the things that are coming to this city, you're not even going to recognize it in 10 years. And I feel that. And what if the people of God, what if people like you and me were on the front end of saying, we're going to shape what Waco is going to become? Because we're not going to see this place as a placeholder. We're really going to own it. We're going to own our now. And in doing that, things are going to change. The kingdom is going to come. People are going to be impacted. And God is going to get tons of glory, not just out of your individual life, but out of all of our lives as this city ultimately becomes a city on a hill. Do you believe that? Do you believe that God can do that? Because I do. And some of you, even as I'm talking, you're burning inside. You're like, man, I want to get involved. I want to do something. Then you need to maybe mentor a kid or maybe volunteer and do something here at the church. Or if you're not going to a life group, dive into a life group. Our life groups do an amazing job of loving this city. It's just a huge part of our heart as a church. Is not just to do our own thing in these four walls, but to be about what God's doing outside of this place. And so a great first step is just to get involved in a life group. And maybe some of you need to serve stars. Maybe some of you need to work at our feast that happens on Friday nights, and you can get information about that. But there's even a next level. Are you ready for the next level? Yeah. Really? Are you really? We have this event. We have this event on January 29th that's going to be happening, and it's called, just wait for it, Beyond the Bubble. This event on January 29th, we have gathered CEOs, leaders in the community, leaders of companies, lawyers, doctors, all kinds of people are going to come, and they want to meet you. And there's limited seating, so juniors or seniors, we are inviting you. If you're saying, I want to be involved in life, I want to be involved in life outside of the bubble. I want to say, you know what, I'm going to own mine now. I want to be about shaping the city. Then you need to sign up to be involved in the Beyond the Bubble event. And you just need to type that into your phone. It's going to send you to where you can register. It will fill up. Okay? So if you're a junior and you're senior and you're like, I want to find some potential in Waco. I want to see the opportunities that are here. Write that down. Go to that website. Fill that form out. Also at the welcome desk, there's this thing that I had nothing to do with it. What was created is called a stay packet. And this stay packet is loaded with options for you that I bet you don't even know happen in this city. And what we want to just encourage you is, hey, what if you owned your now? What if you owned Waco? What if we did it? What if we said, we will see this city become what we dreamed that it would become? What if we stopped complaining about what it's not and we said, we're going to become what it's not? What if we stopped talking bad about it and what's not going on here, but we started what we're dreaming would happen here? Because that's how cultures are changed. That's how cities are impacted. People of God owning up and saying, I'm in. I'm owning my now. And then God can just do amazing things. So would you stand with us? We're going to end tonight just kind of with a declaration of prayer. Just want to pray over you. I want to give you ample time to go and respond and sign up for stars and type in this form, do whatever you need to do. But I just want to pray over us that we would be a people that learned the secret of being content, so that we would not be distracted by the then that's coming, but we would live embracing the now that we live in.